Hello, my name is Stephen Denman. My organisation is Shining Guidance. My website is shiningguidance.com. I'm going to talk to you today about the connections between autism spectrum disorder ASD conditions and the dysfunctionality of eating habits that have become known as eating disorders. Now, we know that an eating disorder is a psychological condition that can affect anybody, whether they have autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions or whether they're neurotypical. Eating disorders can include regularly eating too much of the wrong foodstuffs or not eating enough of the right foodstuffs. And this is probably connected to the individual concern not being able to manage or effectively deal with their own emotions in a proper way. Or perhaps they're excessively worrying on a neurotic level about their body weight or body morph. And so eating disorders can have a very detrimental effect both on a biological and physical level to those individuals that have them. So we know from all available research that individuals with autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions are far more likely to experience eating disorders of one type or another. However, with the right type of emotional and psychological support from accredited, qualified and certificated counsellors and psychotherapists, such individuals with autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions can recover in a timely and effective manner. Now, anyone who is struggling with an eating disorder can seek out the right kind of support, and there is vast amounts of support out there, so they're not alone. And those qualified counsellors and psychotherapists will help them to develop healthy eating patterns and to cope with the underlying emotional and psychological causes that led to them developing an eating disorder in the first place. We don't actually know, in terms of specific kinds of statistics, exactly how many individuals who have autism spectrum disorder, ASD conditions, actually have some kind of eating disorder. But from all available research that has been done, it's known that between 23% to 25% of individuals with autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions tend to have an eating disorder. Now, we have to remember that statistic is taken from the entire grouping of all individuals on a year-by-year basis across planet Earth that have eating disorders. And so you've got to imagine if 1 out of every 4 individuals on a global level across planet Earth who has autism spectrum disorder and ASD condition has an eating disorder, that is a disproportionately huge number of individuals that are suffering from some kind of dysfunctionality in their eating habits. So we come to the question, why do individuals with autism spectrum disorder or ASD develop an eating disorder in the first place? Well, let's just start by mentioning briefly that neurotypical individuals, who might have issues with their body weight or body morph and become a little bit of, too focused on a neurotic level on how they look and are worried about being overweight or underweight and what they're eating and what they're doing and exercise and everything else, they can develop an eating disorder on that basis. Perhaps it may include, but very rarely, financial problems in the budgeting of their monthly incomes in households where the fathers and mothers are having problems. They're struggling financially to look after their families, pay their mortgages, pay their household bills, etc. Or it could be a traumatic marriage, traumatic separation, traumatic divorce. Something of that nature can probably be included in that. But the majority of the time, individuals who are neurotypical tend to have eating disorders because they are neurotic and worried about their body weight or body morph image, and that's really pretty much it. However, individuals with autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions actually develop an eating disorder for a various number of reasons, which I'm going to discuss here. So, for example, they may have sensory differences that are related to food, such as not being able to recognize their own hunger or the fact that their stomach is full up. And this is actually known scientifically as interoception. It is actually very serious because if an individual who has autism spectrum disorder or an ASD condition can't actually recognize whether they're actually hungry or their stomach is full up, that is in itself going to compound the problem and lead to a massive increase over months and years in their eating disorder problems. Another factor we need to consider is the idea of calorie counting. And for individuals who have autism spectrum disorder, ASD, calorie counting can become a mathematical and numerical ritual where the actual counting process becomes, so much of an obsession for them that they will literally obey their own numerical ritualism to do with the calorie counting as a way of coping with their own general anxiety and panic attack levels. This then has obviously a major subsequential effect on the way they eat, the kinds of foods they're eating, the time of day they're eating their foods, and the amount of food they're eating. So, you've got to remember also that individuals with autism spectrum disorder pretty much most of the time have developed highly fixated and strict routines and rules, and that will include with food and physical exercise, which are very difficult to change. Another factor we might consider here concerning individuals with autism spectrum disorder, ASD conditions, and their eating disorders is they may want to actually control the kinds or types of food they're ingesting for reasons of constant and ongoing familiarity. And hence they'll end up deliberately using restricted forms of highly ritualistic eating or food consumption, and in the end that has obviously a knock-on effect of causing, I would say increasingly over many years, a very serious type of eating disorder for them. Another aspect we may want to consider as a reason as to why an individual or individuals with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, may develop an eating disorder is they might actually want to use the food to manage difficult emotions. And that can actually become even harder and more intense if they have alexithymia, which is the scientific word which defines any individual with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, who has actual difficulty in recognizing and understanding their own emotions and the emotions of other human beings or Homo sapiens here on this highly complex world that we call planet Earth. But I think out of all of these factors, the most serious and the most prevalent of these is the fact that the vast majority of individuals that actually have autism spectrum disorder or ASD conditions, as opposed to neurotypical individuals, whether they be children or adults, tend to feel that they're always misunderstood, they're not accepted, they're outcasted, abandoned, rejected, isolated, they're not wanted, they're not needed, they're not relevant, they don't feel they have any worth in Western society especially, or the Western world. And this may lead to those individuals who have autism spectrum disorder, ASD conditions, feeling so immensely socially isolated that they turn to eating huge amounts of food, including confectionery like chocolate, biscuits or sweets, for example. Then they become clinically or morbidly obese as a way of trying to comfort themselves. And this therefore in their minds helps to reduce their social anxiety, and it probably in their minds also helps to limit any risk of them developing panic attacks. So, very sad indeed that it gets to that stage. And I want to just come on to talk about two very important individuals who've done an a huge amount of scientific and academic research into the connections between autism spectrum disorder, ASD conditions, and eating disorders. Now, the first of these individuals is a lady by the name of Dr. Barbara Carpita. Now, she heads up the Department of Medical Area at the Università degli Studi di Pisa, or the University of Pisa, which is in the city of Pisa and the commune of Pisa in Tuscany in central Italy. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in Applied Psychology, a Master of Science degree in Applied Psychology, and a doctorate in developmental psychology from the University of Pisa, as I said, which is located in the city of Pisa, commune of Pisa in Tuscany in central Italy. And her work has been applauded and used by many other scientists and academics across planet Earth, and her research has really been highly beneficial to many individuals who have eating disorders who also have autism spectrum disorder, ASD conditions. Now, the other individual I want to mention is a gentleman who is also a very well-known academic, and his name is Andrea Fagiolini, and he actually studied at the Università di Siena in the city of Siena in Tuscany in central Italy. Now, he graduated from a Liceo Scientifico, or Scientific Lyceum in the port city of Livorno, which is next to the Ligurian Sea on the westward coastline of Tuscany in central Italy. And he received very, very detailed medical training at the School of Medicine in the University of Pisa, which I've already just briefly mentioned, which is obviously in the city of Pisa and commune of Pisa in Tuscany in central Italy. And after completing his psychiatric residency there, he then went on and did a psychiatric residency at the University of Modena, Reggio Emilia, which is in the city and commune of Modena in the Emilia-Romagna region of northern Italy. So in other words, he has got extensive educational and academic research and training in place and is very familiar with the connections between autism spectrum disorder, ASD conditions, and eating disorders. He spent well over 10 years at the psychiatry faculty as well of the University of Pittsburgh Medical School in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania in the United States of America. He served there as the Associate Professor of Psychiatry and Medical Director of the Bipolar Disorder Center, or the BDC, and of the Depression and Manic Depression Prevention Program. He then joined the faculty of the University of Siena School of Medicine back in Italy, where he is still presently serves as the Professor of Psychiatry and is the Medical Director and the Residency Training Director of the Division of Psychiatry in the Department of Molecular Medicine. So both these individuals really are quite unique. They've got vast amounts of academic ability, aptitude and excellence on a unique level. And when it comes to their research into autism spectrum disorder, ASD conditions and eating disorders, these are two individuals that really many people should really be going to research more into, because they really have helped a tremendous number of people. So Dr. Barbara Carpita and Andrea Fagiolini, both of them truly amazing individuals. So I think I presented enough information in this talk. I think I've covered all bases, as they say. I don't want to go into doing talks like in the future where I'm going into too much intricate detail. I think this format is very effective. I hope you have enjoyed watching my presentation as much as I've enjoyed presenting this fantastic and intriguing information to you. I hope you're all well, and I'll let you know now there's going to be many more videos like this in the near future being broadcast by myself. And on that note, I'd like to say thank you very much for viewing my video, and I will speak to you all in the very near future.